Hello.
Hey everyone.
Hey, we are live. Happy Friday. We're coming into celebrating Shabbat on a Friday afternoon. So happy to be here with y'all. Welcome, welcome. So this is our bi-monthly, our second time to go live for this month of Av, and this is kind of what we call our Q&A time, or our time to talk about all things that's happening in the month or any questions that you all might have. So this is the halfway point of the month of Av, and we're excited to jump in here to, I know there's one specific question that Dan, I think you were gonna talk about.
Yeah, so we basically really want this to be a time where we curate questions that you're emailing us or that you are putting into the group. Of course, I just want to give you guys, before we get into anything, a very quick update on what the situation is with the app. So this is a company that designs the app and then allows us to put our content into it. It's kind of like they call it a white label, where they're creating they're creating the functionality, the structure, and then we're putting the content into it. And so we approached this thinking this would be a much
Quicker.
easier, quicker, smoother process than it has been. Like most things, it's always more difficult than you think. So we've gone through a lot of processes and so forth. The company that we're doing it through, they're great. They have a lot of very helpful people working around them, but it is a process. And then the thing that adds to it is once you get everything done on your end, then there's up to a 2-week process on Apple and Android's end to make sure that the app is actually up and running and available in their respective stores. So we are now in a process where we're meeting with the company, and they actually are on the call with you as you're dealing with Apple, so that they can guide the process as smoothly as possible and avoid any potential rejections. So that's where we're at. We apologize. We thought we would have the app up and running much, much sooner than clearly we are. But that's kind of one of the questions that we've been getting, and we just want to make sure that we address that and answer it, so that you're not like, wait, I thought, what happened to that app? We're on it. Trust us, we're totally on it, and we're
And
excited.
we are officially app developers now. We have our developer license through Apple and Android. So the ball is definitely rolling. So it's exciting.
You just have to pay money for that. You don't actually
Yeah,
have to know anything about anything regarding development. That's purely a
that's
monetary
true.
transaction. But,
That's true.
but
But
anyway,
there is a process involved, but
but we
yes,
are that official title. So
yes, ultimately.
um, anyways, so that's an update on that. That's a big question that you guys have had. I wanted to make sure that I addressed that right off the bat. But another question that you have, and again, one of the things, just a little sidebar too. One of the things we're excited about with the app is that you can create various channels within the community. So, for example, there can be a channel where it's Q&A. There could be a channel where it's prayers. So we'll kind of have another conversation, and we really want to set the app up in such a way that it serves you. So your input is going to be very, very important and very welcome in all this, because we're all in this together. We're kind of developing our culture and our community together. I mean, clearly we have standards and a focus and a purpose driving it all, but we
Mhm.
really want you to have a sense of ownership in this, that we're all in this together, because we are. So this first question that you guys had relates to seasons, and kind of what's the meaning and purpose of them. And it's a great question. It's, some of you guys have been in longer than others. This is maybe a little bit more familiar. I think it's always good to repeat it, because quite honestly, if you've grown up in America, um, unless you've had significant exposure to Judaism or to Messianic Judaism, all of this stuff is very, very unfamiliar.
Mm.
We've encountered the same thing. I mean, we felt like God has called and led us into this, but it's also a learning curve for us as well. And there's all kinds of things that we continue to learn and continue to unpack, which is part of what makes it an exciting process. You don't get to the end of God, so you don't get to the end of all your answers either. There's always better questions on the other side of the answer. So that's really been our approach. And so I think that's why this question, kind of comes up, pretty significantly. And so it's good. Now there is obviously a natural and a spiritual to things. You can look in the external outer world and it reflects an internal spiritual reality, right? There is, we all we're on a cycle of a week, and then there is a Sabbath. We're on a cycle of a month, and there's a Rosh Hashanah. We're in the cycle of seasons, where there's autumn and summer and spring and winter, etc. So there's a cycle there. There's a cycle, a yearly cycle with the festivals. And so in all of that, we celebrate all of those things. We are no longer bound by the law. Jesus came to fulfill the law, not change it, but to fulfill it. So now in him and through him, we get to experience the heart of all of these things. These are not box checking things that we do. They're not a list that makes us, spiritual. This is really just about bringing literally the rhythm of our lives into alignment with how God created everything to be. That's literally what it is. And so the week kind of puts us on a weekly rhythm, right? And then there's a day of rest in God. There's a monthly rhythm, and then there's a day of rest, or sometimes 2 days for some months of rest in God. There's rest in God with each of these yearly festivals. So it's really developing a pattern. And of course, the point is to build our lives around God, not the other way around. We don't live for our schedules, at least we shouldn't, right? We live for God, and then he helps us manage our schedules and set them up. But it is through him that it starts. And it's very easy. By the way, if any of you are feeling guilty, don't book a guilt trip on Expedia.com. We all do that. It's very easy to get outside of God's rhythm and into our own. It's very easy to get out of sync with God's ways and get in sync with our ways. And so this is something that I think that's why God set up all of these reminders, because he knows us and loves us. And it's like, hey, I know it's easy for you guys to get distracted. I know it's easy to start, turning your attention somewhere else. So I'm going to give you a way to do that. I'm going to set up a way that things work so that you can stay in and remain in alignment with me. And that's what the seasons are for. And so as we're looking at them, you've already experienced a couple of them already, but we look at each month, like what is God's design and purpose in each month, so that we're trying to bring our lives in alignment with that week by week. And then, we look at the season, each season, we look at and examine, like, okay, there's a period of 3 months here. What's sort of the theme of those 3 months? What are we sort of looking at, and maybe a little bit more of a long-term goal. And then, in the festivals, when we celebrate those, each of that is also a reminder and an alignment and bringing ourselves into, in fact, we're going to be talking about Rosh Hashanah here at the end, but these are all things that we do, and the purpose is alignment. And when we say alignment, what we mean is that we are loving God with all of our heart, mind, soul, strength, and will. And we are trying our best with the power of God to love our neighbor as ourselves. That's it. It's very simple. Jesus himself broke down the 10 commandments. He said, all the law and the prophets hang on these two. And that's what I just described, those 2 commands. And so we're trying to build and order our lives around that very same idea.
I think it's off, so go ahead.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
So you were
Go.
at it's fine. You were at the 2 everything goes, to those.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. That just totally, I don't know what happened on the computer there, but, um, anyways, it was like a call or something and then a weird face. Anyway, so, I'm back. But, yeah, so that's really the point of all of this. So when we talk about alignment, we're really talking about figuring out how to love God with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength will. Because that's really what it's all about. I mean, that's why we do everything that we do, you know. And if we're not doing it for those reasons, then that's okay. It's just something we need to pay very, very close attention to and figure out why. Like, what's in that? Where is that? And invite God into that space and figure it out. So that was kind of one of the questions that we had gotten, that we sort of get fairly often. So I thought it worth addressing and talking a little bit about that. And along those lines, I thought it'd be kind of cool if I know we've already talked about summer and we've already talked about a couple of the months of summer, but maybe it would be a good refresher, Vicki, if you just sort of went in and talked a little bit about the spiritual summer. You know, there's a physical summer, but like the spiritual side of the physical. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. Yes. So we are in the final month of summer, heading into the fall. If you live in Texas, you're really happy about that. Actually, many states right now are very hot, so we're happy about that. And although summer brings warmth, right, and refreshing breezes and relaxation, it's a time where things are slowing down. We experience the joys of being outside and doing recreational activities or inside, right? And this is kind of cool how this describes it. We throw off anything that hinders us and we break out the shorts and the flip-flops, like thinking about that scripture, which is kind of cool. Throwing off anything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. This is from Hebrews 12:1. So sometimes everything that hinders may even include things that are good. But if those
yeah.
things are holding us back from loving God with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength, they need to go. So, if you look at your life so far this summer and look for anything you can throw off in order to kind of travel light, right? What comes up for you? Looking at what can you throw off? I know for me, somebody sent me a polo today and said, "Hey, what can I pray for you?" And it was so sweet, and I thought I had to stop for a minute and go, "Okay, what could I?" And my prayer, and I don't know how often it's this is my thing is I asked for prayers for me to not rely on myself. And I know when I'm relying on myself is usually when I'm coming to the end of myself.
Mhm.
And that's where I got to this morning and realized, okay, I always go back to I have had a habit of going back to my own strength. And so it was just really cool to think about, and as I asked her for that, I was like, hello, you can align with that. And I felt so much better. I also felt so much better because Dan let me vent and he listened, and that was a total gift. So he listened, and it's so easy to be entangled and to release those things. So, so one question is to think about: how are you maturing in your faith and your connection to God? Because wherever you are in life, this is the season to keep building on that foundation.
Yeah.
One of the things that Dan and I have been talking about a lot is what is happiness? Exploring the idea of happiness and the role that is aligned with God. We don't have happiness outside of that. Real happiness, real joy. And it was cool, Dan. You shared with me this morning a quote that you said, of all people, was from the actor. What's his name?
Yeah, it was from Jim Carrey of all
Jim
people.
Carrey.
And he just said, "I hope that everyone becomes rich and famous and gets everything they want so that they will know that that's not where happiness is."
Powerful.
And I thought, wow, that is good. And if you want a biblical example of that, that even way maxes 1,000 X's Jim Carrey, look at Solomon.
Yeah.
He had the nth of the nth of the nth of everything that you can nth.
Yeah.
And And his conclusion of the matter was, all is
Mm.
meaningless without a relationship with God. And in some ways, I think that I have a um, special feeling of compassion for those people that quote have it all, because they have it all. And now what?
So true.
Now what? I
Yeah.
mean, if you, in other words, if let's say you are, lower income, or maybe, even middle class income, and you're looking at all of these things that wealthy people have and places they're going and et cetera, you can, it's still false, but you can talk yourself into, oh, I'm just unhappy because I don't have that yacht, or I'm just unhappy because I don't have, fill in the blank. And you can kind of rationalize away your unhappiness. But what do you do when you actually do have it all?
Mm.
Now, what do you rationalize with?
Yeah.
Now you're confronted with the 2x4 of reality smacking you upside your head, going, now what? And so I think that the thing is that's interesting is that we could probably do a poll. And in fact, I'm going to give you guys some homework a little bit later on. Homework during summer. But I think we could probably do a poll, and we would find a lot of different answers about what happiness is, even amongst people who are believers, right? We all, I think, have our ideas of that, and I think we have also levels of it. Like, for example, if I went somewhere and traveled somewhere, I would be happy. Now, I don't believe that is the end all be all of my happiness, but doing that I would be happy doing that, right? So there's levels of it. What we're talking about that life sustaining, consistent, steady source of what we call happiness, whatever that is. And I think that, for us as followers of Jesus, we reach, this is just my opinion, I don't have a scripture for this in the Bible, but I do believe that, you meet God, and you realize, wow, God is good, like this is good. And you kind of work through things in your relationship and up, and then you go to this stage where, God is best. Like if you still kind of work through some of the issues that inevitably come up in your faith, you get to a point where you're like, God is good. And it's not something that's a bumper sticker that you put in your car. It's not an answer you give in Sunday school because it's the answer is the right one. It's something that comes from the depth of your heart. Like, God is good.
Truly.
But then I think there's another level, and this is what we're talking about, the summer season of maturity. We're also talking about really what happiness is. You get to a point where you're like, God is only. God is only.
Mm.
He is the only source of happiness. He is the only reward worth pursuing. And not that there's some sort of, numerical value attached to it, but the reward is his presence. The reward is 100% uninterrupted fellowship with him. That is the reward. And when you get to that point in your maturity where God is only, I think that more days than not, you are happy, because you realize, even when you're like in situations where circumstances might totally suck, and you might be just like, I am just grinding through the day, can't wait till it's over kind of experience. On the other side, when God is your only, you're like, okay, but someday this is not going to be my reality. Like, I can get through today because I know that this isn't the only day I will ever experience. I have a day coming. I have a day coming when I am going to have God and God alone. He is my reward. And I think it's a mind shift. And if you want to maybe test yourself on this, ask, well, how would you respond if Jesus returned today to recall his saints? Would you be, oh my gosh, I can't wait. Let's go. Let's do this. Or would it be like, oh yeah, but if I could just see my son's wedding. Oh, if I could just see my daughter get married. Oh, if I could just right after my first grandkid, and then or if I could just graduate from school, or I just want to get married, or whatever your fill in the blank is. And by the way, those aren't bad things. It's just, it helps us understand, like, when God is our only, it's like, yeah, I could leave this in a second. What's immediately coming to mind is a conversation between Robert De Niro and Al Pacino in a movie called Heat. And Al Pacino plays the cop. Robert De Niro plays a really high-end bank robber. And Robert De Niro says, the secret is I could walk away. I could get up out of this chair and I could walk out of my life in 60 seconds. I have no connection. I have no, and now obviously this isn't a perfect metaphor for what we're describing here, because we're talking about somebody getting away with a bank robbery versus, eternal relationship with God. But there's a point in there that I think is very, how easily can we leave behind everything we have here? How easily? Are we going to be like Lot's wife and turn back? Or is God our only? Is it like we look forward at God, to him and to him alone? Yes, there are obviously things, if we're married, our spouses are amazing. If we have kids, our kids are amazing. And of course, those are wonderful, awesome things that God intends as blessings in our lives. But I'm talking about even higher than that, even above that. For God to be our reward is, I'm going to suggest to you, the greatest happiness we can experience. Anything else is not necessarily bad, but it does not compare to God either. And so it's a balance, right? It's finding that balance. And again, this is not about shaming anybody. This is not about guilting anybody. This is like, hey, take an honest look at where you're at. Like Vicky said, about kind of taking an inventory of where you're at in the summer. What is your foundation really built on? And if it's not on God, that's okay. Just don't stay there, right? It's okay. Everybody is where they are. But if you're not where God's calling you to be, then just make a decision. You're not going to stay there, and you are going to go where God is. And so, this is, God is he's very gentle. He's very loving. He's very kind. He has so much patience for us. So just maybe take a second look at happiness. And that's what I was going to say is the homework is, think about if your happiness isn't ultimately sourced in God, then take a look at what is and bring that to God. Have a conversation with him about it. This is a homework assignment you're going to fill out and get graded or anything. This is just about you and God, and really entering into a place where you can give him your whole heart and love him with all of your heart, mind, soul, strength, and will. And that's what it's about. So we're going to kind of take a look, or Vicky actually is going to preview Rosh Hashanah, which is coming up, where we get our Rosh on. We get Roshed. So why don't you go ahead and talk about that, sweetie?
Yeah. So I love the way, since I've been learning the seasons and the months, is really this awareness of what's coming. It's like I've never before this lived in a way of like, oh, this is coming up. Like, it's one thing to go, oh, we've got Christmas and things like that. But this has taken it to a whole nother level for me to realize these seasons are spiritual in nature. And there's a purpose for them. And
Yeah.
so I love the idea of as we continue along in this spiritual journey, and I love this community. This is to me like it's a sacred community. And what we are is we are all about the practice of sharing at like each month as it invites this flow of a spiritual time connecting to that. So taking stock of where we are in the year, and that helps us to deepen and heighten our experience of this spiritual life, really. So interesting. Another thing I learned this year, there are 7 weeks between the 9th of Av, which is called Tisha B'Av, and Rosh Hashanah, which is coming up. And we're 2 weeks into that. So it's been 2 weeks since the 9th of Av, which we talked about is that day that the Israelites did not trust God and they left in fear and they did not step into where God was calling them and promising them and the ramifications of that. So there are 7 weeks between that and Rosh Hashanah, which is interesting. So 49 days between the spiritual low point of our year and the newest of new beginnings.
Mm.
And this is another pattern. We discovered that there are 49 days between Pesach or Passover and Shavuot, right? That's those days that we counted the Omer. Same time. No coincidence.
That would
49
be
days
something cool to study. Like as soon as
is,
you're saying it, I'm like, that would be something really cool to see like what other things are linked by that 7-week bridge.
yeah,
Because there
so
seems
true.
to be
It's a
you know,
big one.
yeah, like something to it, and
Definitely.
God always works in details like that. And there's always patterns and connections, and there's a meaning and a purpose to something, whether we understand it or not. So that would be something maybe you and I could take a
Yeah.
closer look at and start digging
Yeah.
into, see what other things are. That
Yeah,
just
definitely. Yeah, because in the spring, we move from liberation, which is Passover, to revelation, right? We move from being in bondage to God bringing his word. It's the revelation.
right.
And then as summer prepares to turn into autumn, we want to bring light into this season that we're in. So Tisha B'Av focuses on what's buried in darkness. That's that time where the Israelites, they cowered back in fear. And then in 7 weeks, that's where it opens wide the gates of spiritual renewal, which is liberation. So it's kind of like this cycle. So our summer and fall journey is our spring journey in reverse, and it's a returning to the beginnings.
Mm.
So I love the idea of this because it's returning to the beginnings, and I feel like it's a personal journey for each of us. And so the question really is, where is God calling you to return to? And I believe that God does that for healing purposes. And so returning to our beginnings, and that is when we discovered and created our self-parenting, because that was really a course that we created in order to dig into that. What are our beginnings? And so we're so excited because we know that this app, I love actually God's timing, because as long as it's taken us, we've actually kept thinking of new things to add and new
Yeah.
things to add. And so there's so much in there that we didn't even foresee when we first started it. And so we are very excited about that, and really knowing that next month is going to be a month of getting that out there, getting us acclimated to that. We have a special 7-day challenge to kick it off once we launch that. So we will definitely tell you about that, but we want to really be prepared for the fall feasts that are coming in September, because it is a new year. We're already moving into a new year. How crazy is that? We're going to be embracing the new year of 5784. That's going to be ushering in September 25th, I think, or whatever the date is. We'll definitely know that better. We'll have that out there for you guys, but we really want this next month to be grounded in us getting our connection, it's not just about the app, right? The app is just a tool that we're using to create a very cohesive community That's the word, is that cohesive and connected community. So what we're so excited about then is that we can really share with you guys resources and how we're celebrating the festivals so that you can do that in your own homes and your own families as well. And then in October, we're actually going to host the last self-parenting workshop of the year. So we're very excited about that and just kind of seeing God's timing in all of that, because this process, we believe, is an incredible way to assist us in returning to our own beginnings and healing anything that may be unfinished or creating disconnection in our relationships with God. Because, like Dan said, that is the source of happiness and that is the source of everything, right? So that is really what we're so excited about the future and where it's all going. And so much we have in store for you guys, and so much that we feel like, okay, God is just like, we want to make sure that this is really set once we launch it, because there's going to be so much happening. And we will be posting in the days starting with the month of Elul. You guys, the month of Elul starts next Friday. It's a week from Friday. So we just have one more month. Actually, we're beyond the halfway point. We have one more month of Av, and starting Elul, we're going to be sharing probably daily in this group, as to set ourselves up and prepare our hearts for the new beginnings of the new year. So we're really excited for that, what's to come, and to connect us all even more. That's our goal with the app. And our goal is to be more and more connected. So next Friday will be the new month of Elul. And the following Friday, the 24th, for our Inspired Lifers, we'll be doing our Zoom call. So we will be live on Monday to present to you guys the month of Elul and give you guys some things to chew on that we will discuss in our Zoom call. So I'm excited to connect. We have another week because this month is long. So we kind of had an extra week in there, but we will be meeting on the 24th, Thursday night at 7 p.m. Central Time in the Zoom call. And we're excited. We're very, very excited. I miss everybody. It's been too long. It's been too long. It would be this week. I think that's what it was. And so it's going to be an extra week that we will be meeting. So very excited. We hope that you guys have a beautiful and blessed weekend. Enjoy some Sabbath time. We do that starting tonight at sundown, and we are going to enjoy some downtime. And we hope that you guys have just a great night. We want to wish you a Shabbat Shalom.
Yes. And Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom. And we're excited. Thank you for being a part of our Get Inspired Life family, and self-care, soul care, and all of the things, all of the ways that we have connected and healed together. We are so grateful for each of you. So have a beautiful night.
Thank you, guys. See ya.
Bye.